Welcome to Escapists Anonymous, the fantasy fiction book club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Sam. This is a podcast for people who love to read and who read to escape into worlds of magic and adventure. But don't let that adventure end when you finish your book.
Join us on Escapists Anonymous to carry on the conversation.
All right. We've finished 2 trilogies over the last couple of episodes. And now, Dan, you'd promised me we were about to read a standalone book. The Blacktongue Thief. Christopher Buehlman.
Thief.
Now, spoilers ahead already. Is it a standalone book, Daniel?
So I guess that the presentation is a standalone story in a world that may have other stories. Well, that does have other stories because I've read the other one, so I can confirm.
I can't remember if you told me there was another book already in this world, but I finished it being like, oh, that was great. I mean, there's clearly more adventure to be had here. I wonder if there's more. Oh, there's already another book and it's a prequel.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the really strange thing is like doing the prequel kind of after, but it's not a prequel. There's no need to read it. It builds out a different element of the world. And I can sort of talk about some of the comparisons there, but like I'd highly recommend it. The Daughter's War is the other one that he's done, and it's absolutely brilliant. Kind of similar, but also very different. So
I think by its very nature of the central character, it would have to be
exactly
because the Blacktongue Thief. The name of it is linked entirely to the central character, Kinch, and also the protagonist of that one, Galva. It's she's a very, very different kind of personality.
Yeah.
But it sounds like a very much needed one because this book, The Blacktongue Thief, is so much about the world building, and it is a world that has been massively affected by those goblin wars. And finishing this book, having really kind of immersed myself in it, it was an area where I wanted to learn more because it was such a traumatic event for all of humanity in this world.
Yeah.
I am going to say this as an overall of the head of the rest of this review, potentially my favourite book we've read this year. The Blacktongue Thief.
I 100%. This hit 5 stars on my rating scale, and depending on your taste of how you like your writing and stuff, for me, like this is pretty close to perfection.
Yeah,
it's got that first person thing that I've realized recently that I absolutely love. Like loads of I only realized really reading this that actually a lot of my favorite books are first person perspective. This is more of like a sort of first person retrospective. Sort of being told a tale by a guy down the pub or, sitting by the fire, whatever it is. It's got that, whatever it is, name of the wind, Farsi, a trilogy type of...
And that was the thing, is when I read and he was just like, oh, so amazing. One of my heroes, Patrick Rothfuss. And I was just like, no, you're better than him.
Well, he is, yeah. It's definitely better than that. And he doesn't fall into some of those Patrick Rothfuss traps.
and Christopher Buehlman perfectly uses the idea of the unreliable narrator. So, the way that the story is told, it's entirely dependent on the fact that we'll never know the full truth and we're given glimpses of it. It's about exaggeration. It's about myth and folklore, poem, oral tradition. There's so much built into this. And considering it isn't a particularly huge book, it's 400, just over 400 pages. It feels like one where from the very first page he's thought through every single part of the world. Now, I'm very aware that we've already been talking for a couple of minutes and we haven't done the blurb.
Yeah, let's do the blurb.
I'm going to do the blurb before we go any further and start talking about specific details. Okay. Kinch na Shannock, owes the Takers Guild a small fortune for his education as a thief, which includes, but is not limited to, lock-picking, knife-fighting, wall-scaling, fall-breaking, lie-weaving, trap-making, plus a few small magics. His debt has driven him to lie in wait by the Old Forest Road, planning to rob the next traveller that crosses his path. But today, Kinchnar Shanak has picked the wrong mark. Galve is a knight, a survivor of the brutal goblin wars and handmaiden of the goddess of death. She is searching for her queen, missing since a distant northern city fell to giants. Unsuccessful in his robbery and lucky to escape with his life, Kinch now finds his fate entangled with Galva's. Common enemies and uncommon dangers force thief and knight on an epic journey where goblins hunger for human flesh, krakens hunt in dark waters, and honour is a luxury few can afford.
Spot on.
Pretty great blurb as well, isn't it? Because most of it is pretty much about the opening scene, and then you get a couple of sentences about here's all the adventures lying in wait.
Yeah, it's like no notes really.
Yeah,
it's really nice sort of setup for the type of adventure and action and monster and magic that we might come across.
It captures the humour of it as well. You know, the almost contractual obligations. You know, subject but not limited to. You know, it's that, you know, that kind of the nature of the guild that he works for, how they're all business, and he's a personality who is constantly at odds with this guild that he's been indebted to.
Yeah.
So yeah, as you mentioned, the book is entirely done from his perspective. Kinch, rather than Kinchnar Shanak as his full name, which is with Kinch, even though his name doesn't really get mentioned. I forgot what it was a couple of times.
I kept forgetting what it was. I was like, "Who's this guy?"
Kinch, what?
But I guess that's the first person thing. You know, it comes up very, very occasionally to remind you.
Yeah. But as a central character, your thoughts?
I mean, I loved it, and I thought he was kind of amazingly written because I'd read The Daughter's War first.
Okay.
Because I hadn't realised it was a sort of prequel. I thought it was like the first book in the world, but actually it came out last year, and this one came out in 2021. So Daughter's War also written as a first-person retrospective, but I think it's just such a talent to be able to fully create a new character with a new voice that is totally unique and have its own full personality that brings across that humour. I wonder whether whether Kinch is more Christopher Buehlman himself, like placing himself into this, and because I know he's a comedian, he's an actor in comedy, like that's his background. He's actually, you know, one of these people that's really multi-talented and
multi-hyphenate.
Yeah, so I wonder whether this is really him bringing his humour to it. And I mean, I messaged you, didn't I? Because I was reading on the audiobook. Christopher Buehlman narrates it himself is one interesting point, which that's one of the reasons I think this might be him doing his own character. Is he good
with all the accents?
Yeah, well, he does the whole thing in an Irish accent that's really convincing. And I was like, having to look it up. I was like, is Christopher Buehlman Irish? And he's not. He's American. Obviously, he's a trained actor and that kind of thing. So,
but a lot of actors can't do accents.
Yeah, exactly. So I messaged you saying, read the voice in an Irish accent, and a lot of these interactions, you know, they kind of start to feel a lot funnier. You know, the interactions where he's getting slapped in the pubs and stuff like that.
What was interesting was I'd already been in my head hearing all the other characters with their actual accents fairly close to, like Norrigal. I already had her in an Irish accent.
Yeah,
but I hadn't got Kinch in one. So when you told me, I was like, oh, of course, they're all Galtish. I need to... Is it Galtish or Galtish?
He says Galtish.
Okay, Galtish. Yeah, then I was like, of course, they're all going to have the same accent. And I hadn't twigged. And I did struggle to put him in an Irish accent for the rest of the book. But I kept reminding myself. Said that.
Yeah, so he's just got this perspective on the world that's kind of, despite his circumstances, half glass full. Like there's a funny side to everything he does, and everything's like, oh well, everything's crap. Like you know, make the best you can of all of it. And then, you know, as a cat owner, the moment he rescues the blind cat, I'm like, this is my guy.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that you go from very early on with Kinch. You're like, what a likable character.
Yeah.
What a kind of like a rogue in the kind of more kind of, you know, jokey, you know, playboy kind of sense, but also he is fully aware of what his own shortcomings are. You know, he's cocky but self-deprecating. He is a really good judge of everyone else's character as well. Like he knows where other people's strengths lie, and that can be partly because he knows how he's going to use those skills for his own gain, but also, you know, he needs to fill in the gaps where he knows he's not going to survive otherwise. And it's not got the arrogance of, like, you know, the Patrick Rothfuss, where it's like, I'm just the best at everything. Like, he knows when he's done crap. Like when the fight with Malk, where you know, he's like, I just clung on to him until he got tired. It's like,
I ran out of steam, so I bit him.
Yeah, and like really regretted it as well, being like, it's not a good thing to get to resort to biting.
It was a low point.
Yeah, and I was just like, yeah, like it's he hasn't got. There's limits. Like he'll big himself up but won't go too far. He'll let people know, like, he wants to still tell the story and the right beats that it had. But the bit where he's doing the game of towers with Buehlman, and then he's just like, and then he sat me down in the bed. He's like, I'm not going to have sex with you. He's like, but of course, if you believe that.
Yeah.
At the end of it, you're like, oh, okay, you just didn't want to talk about that bit of it.
Yeah. And that's where that kind of the deliberate, unreliable narrator. It's his really sort of strong sense and keeping hold of that feel of having a tale being told to you rather than it being like an immersive place yourself in the role of the protagonist or whatever people do when they're reading. This is like you are being told a tale in a pub by a guy who perhaps it's more important to him to get a laugh out of you than it is for him to big himself up. Perhaps, you know, some elements of it are, you know, more fantastical than what happened in reality, but this is about you having a great time being told this tale. Yeah.
And I think, you know, he's not above showing himself to do a horrible thing, or at least justifying it when he does it. Like, one of the ones I loved was when they were sailing the boat away from the Kraken, having destroyed the ship, and he just goes up to the badger, the one who poisoned Galva, and just like
stabs him like 16
and
times.
just dumps him over the edge while everyone else is blind. I was like, that's brilliant, because of course he's like, this is my opportunity. I hate this guy. I have such a grudge against him. I'm not going to kill a fellow Galtish person, so I'm going to get the guy who did the poisoning.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that was so good. Like, just that kind of absolutely brutal thing. Some elements of it put me in mind of, have you ever seen the Dungeons and Dragons film Honor Among Thieves?
So I was going to bring up Dungeons and Dragons when we were talking about the world building, but yeah, like now that you've mentioned it, no, I haven't seen it. But what I was really reminded of, because I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, obviously I've heard you talk about it a bit, but I remember when we were young, there used to be a TV cartoon of Dungeons and Dragons, and a lot of it felt to me like it was inspired by that not the cartoon necessarily, but the way the world and the magic works.
Everyone has their slots. Like, you've got the mage, the rogue, the fighter. Like, there's lots of archetypes. But what's great about that film is it never breaks a fourth wall and says, like, oh, you're watching a bunch of people in the real world playing the characters. But the way it's structured, of like, the way it tells the story within the world, you can imagine this is a bunch of players. When you play Dungeons and Dragons, things go horribly wrong. People do completely sociopathic things for the laughs. And that seemed like one of those elements. You know, like some absolute chaotic person just being like, right, well, I've got the chance, I'm going to stab him and dump him off into the river. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, great, fine.
Yeah.
Because I would strongly recommend Honor Among Thieves. I mean, it does help if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, because you know the kinds of people and the stupid stuff, like when people mess up, when the DM has to step in and send in a kind of an amazing character, just kind of help everyone out.
Clean up squad.
Clean up squad. You know, so and that's what this book felt like. It felt like someone had done a D&D campaign and it had worked out really perfectly in terms of storytelling. They were like, this needs to be a novel.
Yeah.
But yeah, and with Kinch as a central character, it was great. I think in terms of, the blurb, the other character it mentions is Galva. And one of the things, it's not necessarily a criticism, but I was expecting her to be more of a central character throughout the whole novel. And I feel partway through, when Norrigal comes in, she moves off to the side a little bit.
Yeah, she's really kind of overly stoic.
Yeah.
But she is, in this, I think, the extension of what she is in The Daughter's War, where obviously she goes through the Goblin War and that has this impact on her, and that's where she meets this queen that she's trying to find now.
Yeah. And that book, explains how she ends up being who she is. Yeah, because all the way through I was like, oh, there's a lot more to her, but she's got her own her own world, her own story. Like, when Kinch mentions, she's off having a jolly old time of it with Malk when they're hanging out and they, they're having a laugh and having a friendship that he's not too sure about. It's like, oh, it's because she's going off and doing her own thing, and it doesn't necessarily feature into his storyline because he's become more obsessed with Norrigal.
Yeah, there was a definite shift there, wasn't there? And I guess, maybe, you fall in love and that makes sense to a certain degree.
Yeah.
You become a little bit obsessed with the lovely, who turned out to be a sort of past version of Deadlegs, or
great, absolutely great. I suspected a little bit of it because of how she'd originally been described when he first met her, and the nature of magic in this world is so cool.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like the First Law, I guess. Like, it's these kind of like immensely powerful people who are transcending time, beyond the comprehension of the average person. So a lot of people don't even try. And so, with the whole magic, when they cut the rabbit's throat at the start and it transforms into a wolf and that kind of goes, yeah, all right, and then wanders off. And then for it to loop back at the end, I was like, okay, this magic, it feels a bit beyond my comprehension.
Yeah.
Like, it's just because it takes a certain kind of brilliant mind, but it just felt so coherent with the world still. But
yeah.
So when that revelation came, I was like, yep, I don't think that's stupid. She's looped through time or whatever.
I guess, whilst I say sort of this is close to perfect, I'll try and find some nitpicky bits because otherwise it just sounds like I'm gushing. When there was that revelation of maybe kind of confirmation of Deadlegs being Norrigal. How is that spelt in the book?
Norrigal.
It is not. It has got an I in the middle because it's kind of sounded like Nargle.
Nargle.
But yeah, when there is that confirmation of her being Deadlegs, I thought that might be a little bit more of an emotional moment for Kinch, because there's a moment where he thinks he's lost her.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh no, she's there. But then you don't really get any exploration of like, oh, well, how do I actually feel about like the fact that Deadlegs is the woman that I've actually fallen in love with.
But it's because you don't have a huge amount of time to really ponder it.
No.
Because there's a lot that happens in that cave at the very end. And, if we wanted to do nitpicky things, as much as I enjoyed every single event that happened in that cave, that's a lot that happens in about 40 pages.
Yeah. I just wondered whether afterwards he might have reflected on...
And he's on the
that.
run. Him and Galva, heading off.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was fine. It didn't ruin anything for me. It was just, I guess, an interesting thing that I, as someone who's really into that, like, character motivation and development stuff, I'm like, oh, this was kind of a big part of the story, was you sort of falling in love with Nargle.
It's because the story doesn't feel over.
Yeah.
Like, we know she's still alive. There's going to be a different version of her back at the tower that's switched place with Deadlegs. it feels unresolved, but in a very good way. Like, you know, it still felt like a standalone book. If you told me there was never going to be another story from this, and it was just like off to another adventure, I'd be like, great. The open threads here still feel like it's because it's just a continuing of the world. Like, it's been so well crafted, it doesn't feel unhelpfully open.
Yeah.
You know, the whole thing about Fulvir potentially being Kinch's dad. Like, confirmed at the end there, or is it just more magic users playing with mortals, you know, just to mess with their heads because they can, you know? And I like the fact that if it never gets resolved, then it always remains being a kind of jokingly ambiguous thing. So be it.
Yeah. And that again, that brings you back to being told the story rather than being immersed in it, because he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Like, he's not sure when he's telling the story, so he's and I guess, you know, coming back to the Nargle thing, he has this commitment that he is going to see her again, doesn't he, as he leaves. So in his head, it's like, this isn't the end, this is I'm going to come and find you. And even though Deadlegs is like, you're not going to see her again, he's like,
but she could also be lying, because she's also like, she likes to mess around with people, you know, like it is just the nature of it, because he already knows he's seen her again because he's looking at Deadlegs, who's potentially her. So, like,
definitely,
I don't know. It like, again, it just makes it all the more enjoyable because you are just thinking, oh, how much are you messing with me? Yeah, you know.
I mean, the only other thing that I've got on I guess the sort of character interactions, relationships, is just some of the out and out hilarious bits that you have, especially between Kinch and the assassin in the cat. Where he first realizes that she's in there and that she's been in the room while he's been you know, doing whatever he's been doing in his room, and there's this incredibly funny dialogue between them.
But also, like, when she's clinging to the underside of a cave and like watching, and he's just like, and Norrigal comes and be like, "Oh, how about we go do something here right now?" He's like, "No, let's go down to the beach, the windy, horrible beach. It's really horrible and gross and sad." He's like, "Yeah, let's go there instead because this place isn't appropriate." It's just all of that. Like, there are so many interactions where it's just, there's a joy threaded throughout it, even though the world is pretty brutal. Like, the fact that Kinch is this kind of like finding the best way to view something, you know, and again, the background of the story, like his family's still alive, like his mum is still alive back home, and he's got like, you know, nieces and nephews or whatever. It's just like, he doesn't come from a horrible world. He's come from a place where the world is horrible, but his family's made the best of it. Yeah, you know, and you can see how he's taken that forward when, even if he's discovered his skills, which takes him into the seedy underworld of thieves, he's still bringing his kind of like the happiness from his childhood with him. Yeah, it's like, oh, that's kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, and I think that's what was really great about this, because that's such a different feel to the Daughter's War, which is much less funny. But still brilliant, like absolutely amazing. But don't go into reading that expecting
same. Because if it's Galva as a main character, she's a lot more serious.
Yeah. And there is humour. You know, there's the type of humour that soldiers have when they're out at war, and you know, that kind of we're doomed but here we are type of thing, which is I guess a bit of a similar thing, but he really creates a different voice for that character.
I think another like member of the team who needs a bit of knowledge is Malk. He's a character I was expecting to be more of a villain, and I think it speaks a lot to how Galtish culture is like, well, I still won't betray you because you're one of my kin from back home, and so Malk and him become these kind of begrudging teammates for a while. You know, even though they were trying to kill each other, they put it behind them because they had to survive on the island. Yeah, and you know, I thought Malk's end was really interesting. Like
what the where they've been pulled across the
pulling. Yeah. Awful, but you know, it's just, you know, it tied in with Malk's character, this kind of like, I'm not taking any nonsense from this goblin, I hate them, and the goblin's like, yeah, I know you hate me, yeah, come get me, and it's awful, just like him being pulled apart, and it being like, because the goblin knows about it, they call it the pulling or whatever it is, and it's like, so everyone around him's been like, don't do it, stay away, don't do it. And this kind of fatalistic element of him just walking into this because he just won't let the goblin have the last word.
Yeah.
And for him being pulled apart and then eaten there, and then they pull over the other goblin, and then just everything goes back to how it was. And it's literally just like literally while walking down the street. I thought it was such a brilliant scene that didn't need to be in there. Mount could have died in so many other ways, but just, again, the world building we're talking about here, where this particular city, which has the Goblin Quarter, what would be happening when you had a city like that? And he's thought it through.
Yeah.
And it ties into the loss of a character, this tension of having these two very opposed cultures sitting alongside each other in the same, city.
Yeah. I think since we're coming on to the world building, I kind of feel, as we've mentioned a few times, it's just such a strong element of what this is. And what are the technicalities of a world where you have all of these different dynamics, and there's a map. It's obviously this jumbled.
The 9-day calendar for the weeks. You got the moon movements, and then you've got the different seasons and stuff. He thought it all through because it's so intrinsic to how he tells his story. It's interesting. I find it interesting when people choose to do almost a recognizable part of our world, but kind of jumbled up and rearranged. So this is very much a Europe, but in this in a different universe. So you've got Holt is England, Galtia is Ireland, is it Galadia is France, Espanthia Spain, and then you've got what's the Istria, I think, is Greece, and then you go off into the Baltic states.
You've got where they go to find the giants is kind of a sort of Scandinavia, Iceland. Yeah,
well, I think Middle Sea is like Dutch, isn't it, or something like that?
Yeah,
because when they go to one of the cities around there, and I looked back at this map more than with pretty much any other book I've ever read, because he'd given so much consideration to how he was telling the story, not just in terms of their journey, but also how the countries relate to each other, their histories and experiences in the Goblin Wars. Every single thing, I had to go back and look and go, oh, I see, because that links to that. And then it drove them up north. That's why, they had made the arrangements and the things, and that's why the Molrovans are so disliked. I mean, because I feel like the Molrovans are more like Russia, I guess.
Yeah, that was my sense.
And it just meant that it just rewarded you so much to take the time and think about what he was telling you with each of these little things. One of the other elements of the world building, which ties in with Kinch and so much else, is the poetry. The storytelling. You arrive in a city and the first part of a chapter is a song about the city.
Yeah.
And so you're learning about its history, its people, how other people perceive it, because it's a story written by someone else. You've got songs that are banned because they mock a certain king. And so you learn more about the nature of that country, the history, how that king affected them. It's so well done. You see Tolkien using this kind of stuff, and it's taking those best elements and not just aping it, but using it for its own function here.
Yeah, it's sort of building the mythology across each of the different countries that they visit, or even different locations that they visit. And music seems to be like a big part. And I noticed this in both of the audiobooks for this and the Daughters Wars. A lot of the time in audiobooks, when there's a song, the narrator will just say the words out loud, but he actually makes sure that they are sung in the audiobook and given a tune and that type of thing, and that tune kind of fits maybe with a Celtic feel or a Mediterranean type of feel, depending on where the music's from. So I feel like there's a big thing around him trying to build the authenticity of the world that he's trying to sort of bring you into.
It feels so effortless. It is this is a world that he sat and thought about so much. He's got it all sitting in his mind, and it kind of, when you say that he narrates the audiobook and he has an acting background, it absolutely makes sense, because if he has the skills to do it, you would want to make sure it is portrayed in the exact way that you've had it in your head this whole time. And tying in with that, language is such an essential thing in this, like characters jumping between languages. There's so much talk about Galtish, Haltish, Molrovan, Espanthian, like, and how they switch between them, who can talk what languages. You know, the rescue of Queen Maria at the end has to be done via translation, because of course he's like, well, she wouldn't speak this because she's only been raised in these countries. It made me love the idea of this kind of this multilingual world. Everyone's traveling, and it's essential to learn multiple languages because otherwise you can't survive. The traveling of people, the different enclaves of different cultures, like, you know, the Galtish in Holt, you know, and who's rarely ever going to be somewhere why they wouldn't speak each other's languages.
Yeah, well, I think it also highlights the pace at which we move through this, because I think to build all of that stuff in to what is it, 400 pages or so, 13 or 14 hours on an audiobook, like, this could have easily ended up being well over 20 hours trying to like pack all of the mythology and the, you know, the poetry and the songs and all of that language stuff and like building out the world. But somehow he manages to really kind of fly through that. So you're constantly moving at this really fast pace. And, you know, going back to the map, if you think about the ground that we cover over the course of this book on that map, it's, you know, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. You know, when the time skips happen on the boat and just on the road, it's get built in because you have the glimpses. Like, he uses scenes on the travels, not necessarily to have events happen, but to have conversations happen.
Yeah.
You know, have those kind of fireside chats. I think, you know, we were talking about it when we originally did God Killer. You know, how there was a really couple of good scenes where they were by the fire, where they went to the lake, and that was what really worked about God Killer.
Yeah.
Because of it. And this one takes it, just does it perfectly. You know, fits all of that in. Like, I agree with you. I think a worse author, or maybe just the nature of the editing, would mean that they indulge in all that stuff. And, you know, every single bit of world building has a function. Like I say, you're arriving at a city, you are learning about something because it will have value later. It's not just a necessary world building. And I would hope that he and whoever's editing his book keep it that level of streamlined. I would be sad if the books get longer and longer and it's as a result of needing to indulge in that world building. Just keep it at that clip, because it means you're learning and you're invested in the world without it having to be a whole side thing.
Yeah, definitely. So the Thieves Guild and the sort of mystery and mechanics around that, the way that's kind of built out, I thought was just really kind of fun and interesting. And obviously I start hearing about guilds, and at the moment, because I'm on a bit of a Discworld kind of spree, immediately my brain goes to that kind of...
If you're going to have crime, it might as well be organised crime.
Exactly, yeah. So, but the bit where he's arrested and taken to the cell, and then it turns out that, you know, the guy that he's in the cell with is just also part of the Thieves Guild, and just lets himself out of the cell. There's just like all this weird like stuff that I'm like, whoa, like didn't expect that. But then to sort of build out their influence and
now they're everywhere.
Yeah,
they're everywhere, and you know, as we learn that more and more, we get those hints from early on, and as the book progresses, we're like, oh, they do own everything.
Yeah,
and they are the big bad of this book. It's not the giants. It's
not the goblins. Yeah,
it's not the goblins. It's other humans who are just this corporate entity that wants to own and control it all. These, and you know, very literal, they are criminals, and they're very upfront about it.
Yeah, definitely. So what were your... Because I think there's a lot of Christopher Buehlman having fun creating settings that he imagines in maybe Dungeons and Dragons types of scenarios. What were some of your favourite settings that he created?
I think, the Goblin Quarter in the Molrovan city was great, because it was just like you spend so long hearing about how the goblins are this vicious, incomprehensible force. They just bite your legs. They're savage. And then you're like, oh, but they have commerce. And you see their boat going by and they're on a hunting mission. They have a degree of civilization. It's just so alien to us. The nature of how everything's intentionally skew-if. Like the sail and the mast are off, and their buildings
they hate symmetry.
all crooked. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just like, that's such a good thing to make it perfectly at odds with humans who like a bit of uniformity. So,
There's in the Daughters' War, when they see like a goblin warship, and Galva's trying to figure out how many rows of windows there are on the or oars, even like how. But she can't really count because they won't do them in a straight line, so they all just kind of merge into each other. But like that extends anyway. Yeah, is the point I'm trying to make.
What was one of your favourites?
So I think my absolute favourite was like Deadleg's castle.
Oh yeah,
like the upside down stuff and just some of the magic-y stuff going on around there. But I think that whole section of the book, from when we got there to when they set out and they end up hunting down that
bull-headed guy,
the bullhead and his gang, that all of that just felt like really questy.
And then when they get to the city and the one surviving person's been arrested, and
they
have the whole moment where he imagines this connection they have, just as she's about to plunge on the gallows. And I was just like, that's really good. Like, just it's a moment of a look, and they really like, because Kinch is feeling such a type of way about the whole situation. And this person had survived this brutal attack from them, only to then be captured and hanged.
Yeah. But it's his like the things he has to tell himself at times to sort of get through these situations is like, I like to think that she forgave me in that moment, and whatever it is, like it's like, well, you have absolutely no idea, but it's like it tells us a lot about him as a person, that's what's important to him.
And then if you mentioned the Dead Legs' upside down tower, then Fulvir as well, when he turns up and just the worst kind of if he is his dad, he's that kind of uncaring dad who when you find he's like, are you my father? He's just like, I don't care if I am, maybe I am. I walked through that area once and had sex with some lady. Who even cares? And just how he's this legendary figure.
Even all of that felt to me like Dungeons and Dragons-y, like I've got specific types of power. Like the Fulvir sends those dreadful musicians with them on the quest, and they're like, for God's sake. And then it turns out that they've got the special power to slow the giants down and stuff. I was like, oh man, like this is so like it's really well thought through, but that's also really funny in and of itself. It's like, oh man, like it turns out we did need them all along.
Hey, I forgot about the musicians needing to slow down the giants. Yeah, because there's so many details. There's so many things that build in and layer.
Well, I think that's it. That the word is detail, isn't it? Like, I mean, there's so many different types of magic, and it would be really easy for that to feel messy. Yeah, but it doesn't, does it? It feels like, no, it's fine. You don't need to understand this magic. I just need to tell you that it happened, and that's okay.
The tattoos being another form of magic. Like you store your crow, your corvid, mount in you in a magical tattoo, and the way it's stitched in, and when he has the cat tattooed into him to contain Sesta. Like her trapped within the cat, trapped within his arm. I was like, that's so cool. And it keeps coming back. It's not like a one-use thing. Like the giant is covered in horses.
Yeah.
Sesta has one that reverses the time, and they have all these different purposes. And for tattoos to be such a vital source of magic was really cool. And I'm sure there's other books that have done it, but I've never read one where it's done it in such a way that it feels like it goes beyond novelty.
Yeah, not like that. Not like that. Yeah, definitely. I've definitely read books where people have wards tattooed on them to protect them from things like that.
Yeah, because someone has they have iron hands as well, don't they? Like the hands become solid like iron, so you can't break them. And that was really good. One other thing I want to talk about is the violence, because it doesn't pull its punches.
No.
When Malk gets destroyed, when the Kraken attacks, and just, you know, the suckers pulling people's skin off, the goblins as this kind of undercurrent through everything, where they're going to eat them on the boat. You know, and they eat one of the old guy as well, don't they? And they have to kind of close their eyes while it all happens. And that's another one where he just disassociates, being like, I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because it's really traumatic. But one of the most brutal bits that does happen to Norrigal when he describes that branch or trunk coming in and just takes her legs out. Like, I pictured it so clearly in my mind, just her ragdoll body being like,
yeah,
you know, and then and the way he said, like, her legs were just gone.
Well,
like,
it's I think with that one, it's the way he talks about the sound of her legs snapping, like sticking with him. I was like, it makes me feel a little bit queasy.
Because if she's facing it, it's like her knees just going backwards.
Yeah.
Like, I was just, yeah. But it's just another element of it that, you know, it's this brutal world threaded through with humour and light, but you can't get away from the fact that when someone dies, they die horribly, and they often die alone, or they don't die in a manner in which they were. Like, what's the name? Yorbez, the sword master, Norrigal's like friend and, you know, like trainer, and she ends up like first of all being like spat and blinded. But then the second time when they redo the fight, she also dies in a horrible way. And no, Galvagus, but like Yorba's just getting absolutely killed and just being like that's not the way to go out for a true sword master. You take something more noble, a last stand, rather than just being killed in a cave. Yeah.
My final thing is just like the prose, the writing itself. I just thought was so good. These books, it's like having a poem read to you.
Yeah,
for 400 pages, and or I guess as an audiobook, having it read to me, you have to read it yourself if you're reading the actual book. But yeah, like, it's just so well written, I think, and that kind of adds to that feeling of like it just flows so well that it's easy to get through. And sometimes you don't notice that kind of thing, I think, and that's fine. I think that's also a sign of good writing. But I think it's like noticeable where we're talking about the building the mythology of different cultures within the world.
It's all just really well done. The way he describes it in accents. Finally, the gods, the way that you've got for Thanon, and, you know, she has the goddess of death, and, like, you know, people favour different ones, and different ones are more prominent in different cultures. Yeah, everything about this book. It was, like, you know, so easy to read, so incredibly well written. I powered through this in under a week, you know, finding whatever time I could to try and get through this because it was just so enjoyable. You know, I've already recommended it to 3-4 other people. You know, I'll be, if anyone, like, now that we've done this episode, I want to hand this off to someone and be like, right, if you haven't read this yet, take it. Go over read.
Evangelical about it. I think recommend anyone who, you know, is into that Dungeons and Dragons stuff. I would imagine is going to really get a kick out of a lot of this. But I also just think if you're into kind of that epic adventure fantasy type of
epic
thing,
but it's also personal. Like, it just hits all the right notes. Like if you want a fantasy book and you want violence, or you want humour, or you want excellent world building, you want it to be high fantasy because it's got loads of magic, it's got everything you need.
When I sort of scrolled through on Fable that I used to sort of track my reading stuff, I think the people that maybe don't enjoy this are people that struggle when a story moves too fast. These are people that perhaps want a book to be, you know, 700-800 pages to be like slower at building out the world and that kind of thing, and that's fair enough. I think if you struggle with books that move at a really, really high pace, then maybe this will be a bit more of a challenge for you, but I'd still say pick it up and see how you go with the first 100 or so pages, because it's so funny and so well thought through in terms of the detail and the magic in the world, and it's really enjoyable. If you can get past that pacing thing, I think you'll have an absolute riot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, as much as there's a grim darkness to it, I would love to live in this fantasy world because there's a lot going on. There's so much character in it. You know?
It's got too much fun stuff not to want to give it a try, hasn't it? So
I tell you, a 9-day week, ooh, that's a long work week.
Yeah. What's our weekend looking like there?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we can safely say this is a hit for us. We would love to hear what people think who have read this themselves. Get in touch either in the comments section below on YouTube if you're watching us there. Like and subscribe while you're there, that helps us out. Or hit us up on social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook at Escapists Anonymous Pod. Drop us a message, drop us a comment under one of the posts. We'd love to hear what you think on this book because we absolutely loved it.
Next episode.
Next episode, yeah. We are going to move a little bit away from fantasy and read a sci-fi book. And it's not even like touching on fantasy really. We're going straight into basically hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
So we're going to read Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shroud, which came out this year, and really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I haven't touched some sci-fi in a while, so it'll be really interesting to try and get back into that mindset, especially hard sci-fi.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes be a challenge because they really push like technology and the humans and all that kind of stuff. So who knows what it's going to be like.
So if you are reading along in real time with us, then pick that up and see if you can get through it before our next episode. But thank you ever so much for watching, listening, wherever you're doing so. That really means a lot to us. And we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode. All that's left to say is goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.